Hello everyone, I am Storyteller. Thank you for visiting this peaceful place. I know you are looking for something soothing to help you fall asleep, and I am here to accompany you. If you enjoy, please give me a like and subscribe, and let me know where you are from. Thank you. The gates of hell are open night and day, smooth the descent, and easy is the way. Virgil. They all just sat there in the heat, and they waited. The kid came back. He was walking down the platform with his head hung low, sweat running down his pimpled face, like always. He was 16, but looked more like 13, short and skinny, with longish dark hair and a black eye. The black eye was always there. It never faded. He took a seat at the end of the bench with the others and looked down at his dirty old sneakers. Roman. Same shit, little man? The kid. Yeah. Roman. I don't know why you even bother no more. They all just sat there in silence. Sandra. It's so hot today. 3 of them looked at her. Roman. Bitch. It's hot out here every day. Sandra. I told you not to call me that. Colonel Duval. Roman, please. Roman gave a tiny chuckle and pulled the pack of Newports from his pocket and lit one up. That pack was always near to full. He exhaled some smoke and looked down the tracks into the distance where the rails slowly bent off into the trees and out of sight. Sandra wrinkled her nose and waved the smoke away. Roman. Man, when this train gonna come? Brian. Why do you always ask that same question over and over? Roman. Yo, man. I already done told you to bite your tongue and stay over there, you strange-ass bitch. Don't make me get up. It's too hot for me to whip your ass right now, you silly-looking motherfucker. They all just sat there in silence. Colette fanned herself with the folded newspaper, looked down the tracks, and then handed it to the colonel, who did the same. Roman took one last drag on his cigarette and then flicked it at Brian seated at the end of the bench, bouncing it off his jeans and leaving a small horsetail of orange sparks in the air as it fell to the platform. Brian did not respond at all. Roman chuckled. The kid. I'm gonna take a walk. Roman. Seriously, man? Again? Is you retarded? The kid. Fuck off. I'm gonna take a walk. You can come with me if you want. Roman. Nah, man. I'm good, shorty. You go off and wander. I'll be cooling it right here when you get back. The kid walked off down the platform towards the exit stairs, giving Roman, or maybe all of them, the finger with his right hand held over his narrow shoulders as he departed, not looking back. As he passed the thermometer mounted on the wall, the temperature read 117 degrees Fahrenheit. Always 117 degrees Fahrenheit. Always. Colette. Can someone remind me how he got here? I know he's told me, but I just can't remember. Sandra. Me neither. They all just quietly sat there in the heat for a while, Roman looking down the tracks every minute or two. He lit another Newport from the bottomless pack. Colette and Sandra both squinted and waved the smoke away. Brian looked up at the sky. Brian. How come the sun never sets? Colette. Sandra. I forgot how you got here too. I know we've discussed this before, but I just can't seem to remember these things. Sandra. I came home from a business trip early one day and found the car that belongs to my husband's 24-year-old secretary blocking the driveway. When I entered the house, I could immediately hear the sounds coming from the bedroom. I went to the stove and blew out the pilot light and turned up the gas. Then I lit a few candles on the dining room table, left the house, and drove my car halfway down the block and watched as it went up in flames a little while later. It's sad that my baby Jason was there in his crib at the time, but I really didn't want to be a single mother. That was in 1972. What year is this? Colette. Oh, that's right. That's just awful. Roman. Yo, do y'all ever plan to shut the fuck up? Making my head hurt over here. Colonel Duval. Roman. I must politely ask you once again to mind your language when speaking with the women. Roman gave him an angry stare and then flicked his cigarette butt out onto the tracks and used his black bandana to wipe the sweat off his forehead. Brian. Are we ever going to get any food? When is the food coming? I'm hungry. Colette. I don't think we can get food here. Sandra. Colette, I forgot how you got here too. What awful thing did you do? Please remind me. Colette gave her an aggrieved stare for a moment, and then revealed a broad smile and answered in a flowery and friendly tone that could not have been less sincere. Colette, I didn't do anything awful, Sandra. Nothing like what you did. Your own child. Unthinkable. No, all I did was fulfill my Lord and Savior's will. When I was working in the hospital, if I saw in a patient's chart that she previously murdered an unborn child, well, I carried out God's will. I did this 6 times before they caught me. I wish it was 6,000. Sandra, I'm an atheist. Colette laughed during her brief reply. Colette, this is probably not the best place for you to cling to that silly notion, dummy. Sandra, go fuck yourself, Colette. They all went silent for a while. The heat was oppressive. There was no shade. There was no breeze. Brian, when are we going to get something to eat? Colonel Duval, son, I've been here far longer than any of you. I assure you, there will be no meals served. Brian, well, we all need water. Will we get some water at some point? The colonel ignored this query. After a while, Roman spoke up. Roman, yo, old man, remind me how you got here. Colonel Duval, I was in the war. At Antietam, we captured some rebel soldiers and we needed information about troop locations, numbers, armaments, that sort of intelligence. We did things to them to ensure that we got that information quickly, but later, I was court-martialed, and they hanged my commanding officer and myself in Washington for our war crimes. It was quite the scandal at that time. Roman, Antietam? Where that at, man? Iraq? Colonel Duval, no, son, that's in Maryland. Can you please remind me how you got here? I'm sorry. My memory is not what it once was. Roman, shot a few niggas. Colonel Duval, excuse me, son? Can you repeat that? Roman, yeah, I shot a few niggas just down the block from where I stay in Washington Heights. I've been running that corner for 3 years, and one day these little bitches show up and just set up shop and start serving my customers. It wasn't something I had to think about much. Shit. I also hit a delivery man bringing some cases of beer into the bodega on that corner, but I didn't mean to do that. He was just in that wrong place at the wrong time. Then I shot it out with the NYPD. It was pretty quick. I caught a few in my back and one in my neck. Anyways, man, that's how I got here. He pointed at the scar on his neck and then lit another cigarette. The kid was walking back down the platform, his olive drab green U.S. Army t-shirt heavily stained with sweat. The thermometer read 117 degrees Fahrenheit, as always. Sandra, can someone remind me how he got here? I can't seem to remember these things for long, for some reason. Colette, I don't recall either, but I'm sure he didn't burn his child to death. Sandra shot an angry look back at her, scowled and looked away, crossing her arms over her chest. Roman looked down the tracks. Sandra. Fuck you, Colette. Colette smiled, smugly. Roman. Man, when this train gonna come? Sandra. I do feel really bad about my son, Jason. I just didn't know what else to do in that moment. That's why I drove to the bridge afterwards. The kid took a seat at the end of the bench. Sandra. Hey kid, I'm sorry. Can you please remind us how you got here? The kid. I took my dad's pistol to school, and I shot a few bullies and this one asshole gym teacher. Then I shot myself. The kid never said very much. Roman. Same shit, little man? The kid. Yeah, I walked and ended up right back here, just like always. Felt like I was walking for 2 hours. Wish I had my iPhone. How long was I gone that time? Roman. I don't know, man. Maybe 4 or 5 minutes. You see anything new? The kid. Number. It doesn't matter which way I go. It's just a long, empty road, and then I pass by an empty high school that looks just like mine, and then I end up back here. He stared down at his dirty old sneakers. Colette. Maybe next time you should stop in that school and take some geography classes. She laughed at her own joke, and the kid shot her a grave look. Sandra did too. Sandra. Jean-Paul Sartre said, "Hell is other people." I think he was right. Sandra crossed her arms over her chest and looked away. Colette. How did you get here, Brian? Brian. I already told you. I took 17 women between 1985 and 1992 before I was arrested. Mostly prostitutes. Then I was on death row down in Huntsville for about 14 years until I ran out of appeals. Are they going to bring us any food? They all went silent for a while and stewed in the heat of the brutal, unyielding sun. After a few minutes, Roman looked down the tracks. Roman. Man, when this train gonna come? Colonel Duval. I wouldn't be in such a rush, son. Roman. Oh yeah, why dat? Colonel Duval paused and looked at the tracks running off in the opposite direction, towards the desert, before looking back at Roman. Colonel Duval. Well, son, we don't know where that train is going to take us, do we? He paused for another moment and stared off towards the desert again. He spoke without looking back this time. He spoke quietly. Colonel Duval. Maybe this is the best part. What if it only gets worse from here? What if this is just the beginning? Roman lit another cigarette and then turned away and quietly stared in the other direction, down the tracks to the point where the rails bent off and disappeared beyond the trees. He exhaled, and the smoke drifted down the bench towards the others. They all sat there and waited for the train. Eventually, the kid took another walk and then returned a short time later, drenched in sweat. Brian remained hungry. Colette and Sandra refused to look at one another. The colonel had a solemn cast to his face, and Roman continued to reach into his endless pack of cigarettes. The temperature was 117 degrees Fahrenheit. They all just sat there in the heat, and they waited. Out for the count. A knock, knock, knock came from the top of his coffin lid. Eckhard Freud closed his eyes and gritted his teeth. One day's sleep was all he wanted. One day of peace. That damn boy would jump at the shadows of his own bat wings. Eck pushed up his coffin and glared at the boy, not even deigning to sit upright. He kept his arms crossed over his chest. "Yes, Dunstan. What is it?" Dunstan Greaves stood there in his PJs, holding a blanket. He shifted from one foot to the other, looking awkward. "I heard a noise, Ek." Ek's eyebrows rose. He tried to keep his voice even. "A noise? You woke me, Count Freud, from his slumber for a noise? Well, what kind of a noise was it? A vampire hunter coming to stake me? The village populace come to burn me? What?" Dunstan looked at his feet. He prodded the floor with his toes. "Well, no. It was a different kind of sound. A spooky sound. A spooky sound. A spooky Ek sat up. "You're an undead creature of the night, Dunstan. You're over 300 years old. And I turned you when you were 24. You can't be afraid of every creak and groan in this old manor. And most importantly, you can't be waking me whilst I'm getting my sleep." Dunstan sagged. He looked miserable. "'Kay, sorry." Ekahard likewise deflated. Who could say no to those hypnotic eyes? They made him feel like a monster. "Tell me, Dunstan, what can I do to make you feel better?" Dunstan brightened a little. "Well, I guess, maybe, I could sleep in with you today, Ek?" He paused before hurrying on. "Just for today, I promise I'll sleep in my own coffin tomorrow." Ekahard closed his eyes. "Beelzebub, give him strength." "Fine, fine. But just for today, I swear to the old ones that this is the last time, though." The boy started to scramble in. "Oh, thanks a lot, Ek. It makes me just feel safer, you know? I can sleep soundly, knowing you're there to protect me." Ek scooched over to the far side of the coffin. The casket maker hadn't constructed it with two bodies in mind. All right. But don't hog all the duvet. You've got your own blanket there. And leave me some of the pillow, damn it." The boy snuggled down. His breathing slowed. "Thanks, Ek. You're the best. G'day, buddy." Ekahard's grumpy exterior melted a tiny bit. He grumbled. "Well, it's all right. Good day, Dunstan." Dunstan jumped, propping himself up on his elbows. "Did you hear that?" Ekahard groaned. One day, one single day, that was all he asked for. "Sleep," he groaned. "Lemme sleep." Dunstan remained half upright, listening. He raised a finger in the twilight of the closed coffin. A heavy thud and scrape came from beyond the casket's walls, as if on cue. "That," Ekahard frowned. He blinked away the sleep in his eyes. Yes, he had heard that. A bat of worry fluttered its wings in the dusty corridors of his ancient heart. Could Dunstan's paranoia be hitting the stake on the head for once? Was it? I don't know. Ek, I think it's what I heard earlier. There's somebody else in the house. There's something in here with us. That woke him up faster than a snort of garlic. Could it be vampire hunters? He thought all the hunters had gone extinct and passed from reality into folklore and legend. He didn't believe any existed anymore. But if they did, he ought to do something. He stirred, starting to sit upright. All right, he said, running a hand over his face. You wait here, boy. I'll check it out. If there's trouble, fly away. Be careful, Ek. Ekahard pushed open the coffin lid. He slipped like liquid through the gap, letting it close without a sound, sealing the boy safe inside. Outside, in the dark, thanks to those fancy blackout blinds, Ek's senses adjusted to the house. He sniffed the room, eyes glinting like a cat's. He attuned himself to the very particles of air as they floated around him. Something shifted down the corridor. A faint blue glow throbbed. A thud, a scrape, and a moan whispered along the floorboards. Ek's teeth extended, and his sharpened nails itched for a fight. Well, bathe him in holy water. Dunstan was right. Could you say the boy was crying wolf when against all odds there was one? Sometimes the boy had unfounded fears, but this time his intuition had proved to be an ally. Ek owed him an apology if he lived to see the moon's light again. Lighter than the motes of dust drifting in the gloom, he stalked towards the disturbance. A man was standing in the grand foyer, his back turned. He had an eerie, ethereal shine and swayed from side to side. His ripped shirt dangled from him in tatters. He appeared to be speaking to someone. A human? Foolish, foolish. Ekahard pounced. The man's body offered no resistance, and Ek passed through him as though he weren't there. Cold electricity crackled over Ek's skin as he pierced the stranger's form. Ek thudded into the wall, head spinning, bewildered. He looked up at his failed would-be victim, bats fluttering in his vision. The misty surface of the man's skin strobed in the gloaming. He looked down upon Ekahard, eyes furious, face drawn in a rictus of mourning. One side of his neck was a gaping black hole from which ink-black blood had gushed and stained both skin and cloth. He raised a hand and pointed at Ekahard, wailing, "Uh-oh." Ekahard had killed this fellow the other night. He'd brought him back to their place as a late-night snack. It wasn't good for his digestion, but sometimes you had to indulge. Other ghosts apparated on either side, like unwhacked whack-a-moles. "I am Shane Abbott," moaned the ghost, "and you have wrongfully killed me. I have woken the others too." There were many. Other voices joined in a choir of the dead. Oh, so many. Oh, sweet Je. Ah, oh, sweet Nosferatu. Wasn't that a kick in the blood-sucking teeth? The only way to get rid of ghosts was with an exorcism. And the only way to have an exorcism was with a priest. What vampire in their right mind would invite a priest into their home? They could spritz you with holy water or brandish a crucifix at you. And if the holy man did get rid of the hauntings, what then? They'd, bless the place. Dunstan's voice called out from the other room. Eck? Everything all right? Dunstan, my boy, said Eck, not breaking eye contact with the head ghost. I don't want to sound all aflutter, but I have bitten off more than I can suck here. We ought to contact the council. We need to vampire outside help. Forever haunted. I know. I have to run. Get away. But as yet, haven't the courage. I am in the corner, huddled, naked. I'm more colorful than any clothes I could wear. I'm red, black, purple, and blue. Battered and bruised, my crime inquiring about his whereabouts. Together for 6 years now, our beautiful son asleep upstairs, and I'm not entitled, according to him, to ask him anything. I am not and never will be the boss of him. I'm replaying my actions and conversation over and over again. He's never raised his hand to me before. Verbal abuse, yes. Threats, yes. But never until now, connection physically. I realize this didn't just spring up out of nowhere. For weeks now, it's been building money worries, new baby, never having lived together before. He can't handle it. He can't even handle the thought of being a dad. He acts as if he hates him. I believe he's jealous of him. Maybe it's just a one-off, I tell myself. I wipe my nose, and my hands are covered in snot, tears, and blood. I have to get up. I have got a baby to look after. He can't see me like this. I need to shower. I can wash away the blood, but never will I be able to wash away the shock and fear I felt. He hasn't gone near me since the birth, and last night, with the first punch, his erection appeared. It grew the more he hit me. The names he called me, the force he used. I can't tell my parents. They didn't want me to move in with him in the first place. I'm 19. I had told them. An adult and a new mom with a fella that adores me. I'll be fine. How can I now go back and tell them they were right? It's now 4 months on and middle of summer, and I'm clad in a woolly, oversized sweater which hides a multitude. He's got clever and hits me in places which can be hidden from everyone, but he doesn't hide his beatings from his son. In fact, I think he waits until he's asleep in my lap sometimes to start. He knows I'm more afraid of him hurting him than me. Yesterday, something in me snapped. I'm not taking anymore. My son's not taking it anymore. We both deserve better. In walks the oppressor. I usually sit waiting to suss out his mood before I do anything, but not today. I carry on reading a book. Paul's asleep in his cot, oblivious. He glares at me, walks into the kitchen, and comes storming back. Where's my tea? You know what time I get in at, and my tea and dinner should be already prepared, sitting on the table, waiting for me. Paul and I have already eaten, and since the last time I prepared food, it ended up all over me and the kitchen. I've decided I won't be doing that anymore. His face is incredulous. In any other situation, it would be hilarious, actually. Even now, it's hilarious. I start to giggle and can't stop. Nothing could have stopped it. Have you finally lost the plot, stupid bitch? What's funny? I stand up and ask him, for once, can we take our fight into a different room and let the baby sleep in peace? I start walking before he gets a chance to respond. He comes in arm raised and stops midair as he catches sight of the carving knife in my hand. I slice and only succeed in ripping his shirt. He starts apologizing, the only time since the first time. Tells me he loves me. He'll never hit me again. I can feel my resolve breaking and need to get to my son. I start walking and he grabs me. The knife clatters to the floor. I knew there and then I was going to pay for this. Big time. He goes in and wakes up. Paul puts the disturbed toddler in his walking chair and hands him the knife. I beg him to take it off him, but he walks over to me and spits in my face. I tell him I'll do anything he wants, that I love him, but just take the knife off the baby. He pushes me on my knees and makes me go on all fours and rapes me while my son gurgles and plays with the knife. Not a scream or whimper do I make, but hum and make soothing noises so Paul won't get alarmed. When he's finished, he gets up and urinates on me and Paul. I've never known such hate and haven't experienced it on the same level since. When he leaves the next day, I pack up all his stuff and our stuff. I ring my parents and beg them to get me out of there and plead with them, can I come home? I hear my mother sobbing in the background, and my dad says, "Darling, we've been dying for this call. It killed us the last time when you asked us to leave and not come back. We'll be there right away." I never told them about the rapes, too ashamed, but the latest beatings were obvious. You only had to look at me. The drive home is terrifying and soothing at the same time. I knew I'd done too much growing up. I could never go back to the girl that lived with Mammy and Daddy again. I wasn't the same girl. He killed himself in a prison cell. I didn't send him there. It was an awful crime committed on someone else. It was a twisted relief, knowing Paul would never have to see him, and a twisted sadness, because he'd been my first love. And for a long time, I adored him. Time and life move on. Scars heal. Hope returns. But your past is always your past. And a part of me will be haunted forever. The hour approaches, gold and silver thread shimmer in my candlelit chamber. The figures of 3 noble women standing beneath a garden tree in the tapestry opposite feel as much part of me as the veins in my still, slender hands. One holds a bunch of flowers, one carries a basket of eggs, and the third stretches out her hand to a pelican. Symbol of motherhood, it is said the pelican will pluck its breast and feed the young on its own blood rather than see them starve. I can almost hear the mocking laughter of lives mercilessly cut short. In my dreams, the piercing cries of unquiet souls falsely accused. Grisly husks with popping eyes, whose contortions form a grotesque parody of life. Your time will come. We are waiting. The hour approaches, not if I keep standing, while the rest of my body crumbles. My ears hear well enough. In the early years, wigs lent majesty. Later, they covered the true extent of my hair loss. In my next dream, I enter a hall of mirrors, long forbidden in my palaces. Wigless and mask-free, I recoil at the gray tufts springing from a once noble crown. I'm dismayed by the sunken hollows that pass for cheeks, and my neck is a cavern of worms. I open my mouth to find stumps rattling in my jaw like beaten soldiers. My eyes, once glorious pools of gold brown, are blackened pits. I wake up yelling, and Cat is there to soothe my brow, as she did when I was a child. Yet Cat died years ago. You killed her with overwork. The hour approaches. Only last week, I was indulging in my favorite candies, and my neck was bedecked in a fine ruff with loops of hanging pearls. Since then, I've barely eaten, though my thirst is unquenchable. Knowing I no longer have the stomach for wine, my maids pour weak ale down my unprotesting throat. That way, I live longer. Pain and melancholy have been my bedfellows for so long. No amount of bloodletting of the body's humors can rid me of them. I must remain upright. I was once a tall, striking creature with auburn hair. Unfortunately, my womanly body was regarded as unfit to rule on account of its corruption, the result of Eve's fall from grace in the Garden of Eden. I had nightmares of a ghastly preacher shaking his fist at me and inveighing against the monstrous regiment of women whose ruling over men was deemed repugnant to nature. However, at the key moment, my imperfect flesh became wedded to the body politic. By some mysterious process, it rose above physical limitations and took on a perfect form. Early on, I learnt to suppress any sign of weakness and use my femininity as a weapon. Born under the sign of Virgo, I was married only to my people. As expressed in my clothing, I sacrificed self for their symbolic love. Over the years, this red-painted cochineal mouth has issued commands, witty rejoinders, sarcastic ripostes. When it suited me, occasional snippets of wisdom. These childlike lips had courtiers running to do my bidding, trembling lest they displeased me and lost their heads. Little by little, I emerged from feebleness, impressing statesmen, and learned men alike. On my progresses through the country, I was said to have the common touch, waiting for hours to catch a glimpse. Ordinary people were touched by my concern for their comfort and welfare. Admittedly, there was precious little to be had in some of the city's hovels. You put on a good show. But the hour approaches. Finally, my supreme moment came. The defeat of the Spanish Armada turned my country's fortunes around. After exhorting the men encamped at Tilbury to victory before they set off in their cannoned ships, I emerged as Gloriana. I may have had the body of a feeble woman, but proved I had the heart and stomach of a king. Perhaps triumph entrenched me, made me more like my father. Loved and feared in equal measures, he bestrode the court like a colossus. A rule which started full of promise grew tyrannical. People feared for their lives. Now you fear for yours. The hour approaches, not if I keep standing. You may wonder how I could love a man who in one foul swoop instigated the destruction of my mother when I was not yet 3. My first brush with death. Even now, I'm unsure whether it was love or fear that drove our relationship. I never spoke to anyone directly about my mother, least of all the king when he lived. My early sagacity may have saved me during my most perilous moments. During my sister Mary's reign, my very survival hung in the balance. I died many times in my mind then. The consummate player, I played for the highest stakes and won by a hair's breadth. Even when I succeeded to the throne, I rarely let my guard down. Those I've truly trusted have been few and far between. But if I outranked them all in terms of flair, capacity, and intellect, I didn't do it alone. I took advice from the best counselors in the land, namely, my dear Cecil, who served me faithfully until he died a few years ago, and whose son now takes his place. Perhaps the older Cecil didn't always please me, but without him, the burden of politics presses heavily. The well of depression, which first opened when I lost Kat, my governess and dear friend, deepened. I miss her. Take those leeches away, and let me have some peace. Nay, none of it feels like winning now. There's nothing triumphant about lying swaddled in a heap of cushions, even if they are in Richmond Palace's private quarters. Our family often decamped here to escape the turmoil of state affairs. Yet this dreamscape of towers and turrets overlooking the river has become a glorified prison. A servant stokes the fire, keeping off the last of winter's chill before spring's sweet arrival, which I won't see. With each passing day, my ladies add more cushions, so when my legs buckle from the strain of standing for hours, no bones get broken. You need to rest and get some sleep, Your Majesty, except to lie down is to face death. Your hour approaches. Ignoring the doctor's wheedling, I remain fixed as the northern star. He and Cecil work in tandem. The smooth politician, who isn't a patch on his father, and the oily medic grown greedy on royal patronage. Between them, they will pluck the name of my successor from their childless queen's lips if it's the last thing they do. Of course, I should never have agreed to have the coronation ring removed from my finger to relieve the swelling. I'd not taken it off since my coronation all those years ago, and nothing has been right since. However, I'm adamant that my mother of pearl locket ring remains on my finger for as long as I breathe. What happens next is beyond my control. I trust the women who wait on me will honor my wishes. Only 2 weeks ago, I was able to cast the pain aside and demand my wardrobe mistress clothe me in a fine linen dress and put a ruff round my neck. Enduring the discomfort of hoop and bustle, my face was covered in a thick layer of white lead makeup to cover the pox I was left when I caught smallpox as a young queen. The daubing of my wrists in sweet perfume made me feel almost human. Now sunken in cushions, the chime of bells reaches across our fading fields. I catch the tail end of whispers, infuriated at not being able to hear precisely what's being said. I can no longer demand they tell me or suffer the consequences. The nightmare of that fortress rising above me is upon me again. At the time, the sight of the royal prison almost unhinged me, but a mistress of deception must survive such trials. My elder sister Mary was ruling the country with a rod of iron, and the stakes were kept busy dealing with dissenters. To be so fierce in her beliefs may have been my sister's undoing. When I first became queen, I refused to make windows into men's souls. So long as people conformed to the Anglican religion carved out by my father, they had no need to fear. Yet in your reign, you've ordered more deaths than your sister. Your hour approaches. The very mention of the tower would make the most hardened traitor's bowels shrivel, especially with the threat of torture. As a member of royalty, I would not have to suffer the horrors of Wyatt and his supporters when their rebellion failed. Although I distanced myself from all plots to overthrow my sister, every failure put me in peril. With rumors and counter-rumors circulating of my complicity, I daily faced the threat of destruction. I vividly remember that journey to the tower, passing scenes of horror and desolation. Heads and body parts mounted on spikes at the city's gates displayed the consequence of treason. As we approached, I heard the blood-curdling roar of its lions and turned feverish. To be revisiting the place where my mother had spent her last days, and to have to endure interrogation, seemed beyond me. But I kept my resolve. Any consolation in being given pleasant rooms was short-lived when I discovered the only means of stretching my legs meant having to pass the sight of my mother's scaffold. If it came to it, I'd planned on asking for a French sword rather than the cumbersome axe. My mother had made exactly that request before her execution, and then had to suffer the agonies of waiting for my father to grant her wish. Much later, I learnt there was talk of sparing her and allowing her to flee to a nunnery. When the king's love turned sour, he had punished her failure to produce a male heir by getting Cromwell, his clever and formidable politician, to accuse her of numerous acts of treason. They included witchcraft and adultery, including with her own brother. No woman's name was more besmirched. She had been called the king's whore before he made her queen. But she met her death with dignity, making a wise speech to the gathered crowd. In a stroke, she was dead, but not dishonored. I gleaned the details of my mother's final days, long after her death. I dimly recall seeing her as a child. I did not live with her, and when her deliveries of lovely clothes dried up, I sensed something was wrong. In the flickering candlelight, they have coaxed me to bed, where the dark night hovers waiting for my soul. I've always been surrounded by people wanting something. The country's most senior men wait here, watchdogs to a diminishing power. Even a queen cannot hold back death forever. The hour approaches. My physician presses my wrist and clears his throat. Your Majesty, there's the matter of the post-mortem? No cutting, but with great humility. It can be helpful to know the cause of illness for future understanding and inquiries. No, and, the issue of embalming? No, it is usual practice with royalty. No, of course, Your Majesty. His shoulders slump. He will have nothing interesting to report for posterity. The Archbishop arrives carrying oils. Must speak alone. My voice cracks. Everyone to go. In the silence, the Archbishop reaches for my hand. I dreamed of Mary again, I whisper. Which one? Your sister? Or the other one? My cousin. She was the Queen of Scotland. I should never have signed the death warrant. I didn't mean it to be sent. It had to be, Your Majesty. She was complicit in the Babington plot. I tell you, my hand was forced. It was unseemly. I fear God will judge me harshly. Yet, while your cousin lived, You were in constant danger. She was your ultimate rival. But then the manner of her death. Arg. She was not felled straight away. I heard her daw, ran out from under her dress, howling. And then they dipped his nose into her blood. Bitter tears form runnels in my makeup. To go the grave with such thoughts is abominable. What is done cannot be undone, Your Grace. But will I be pardoned for my sins? You will be pardoned and treated as a queen in heaven, as you are on earth. But his voice lacks conviction. Have you thought any more about the most pressing matter? The kiss of his lips to my hand is like the flutter of a bee's wings over a honey pot. They need to know. Who will it be? A vacant tear falls onto the pillow. I have no heirs, so it will have to be Mary's son, James. But I'm damned if they're getting it out of me till I'm ready. They plagued me to marry and produce an heir, although no man ever pleased them. I played along with their schemes, kept them dangling while they sought out the best alliances. My maids were bribed to report the regularity of my monthly bleeds, but in the end, nothing could induce me. When it came to it, I couldn't allow a man to rule over me. Not even Dudley, who I almost loved. At least until our ardors dampened to the warmth of friendship. But how could I forget what happened to my mother when she married my father? And his love turned to hate. Or how my sister's husband deserted her and returned to Spain, leaving her bereft and childless. I played all proposed alliances off against one another, secretly resolved to remain single. No matter that the cushions have been removed. I request the assistance of my ladies to help me out of bed so I can see the tennis court from the window. I remember Dudley, long gone, playing hopelessly to amuse me. He was, however, a fine horseman, and we spent hours riding together. The only time I felt truly free. My chief counselor strides over, touches my shoulder. Your Majesty must go to bed. A knight and leader of the Privy Council he may be, but I will not abide such insolence from a whippersnapper. Little man, you do not use the word must to princes. Your father would not have spoken so. The truth is as bitter as gall. Knowing I must soon leave this life makes him presumptuous. England will have but one queen and no master. The roar of the lion is in my ears. At my coronation, I wore my mother's crown. It fitted me well, lying in bed, strangled by unspoken words. Their waxen faces loom, pressing for the name of my successor. Will it be James of Scotland, Your Grace? My mind flips back, and I'm riding in the barge along the Thames, heading towards the Tower again. I keep telling myself I'm a passenger, not a prisoner, but my body has swollen. After my sister, I am the rightful heir to England's throne. My father restored my legitimacy, at a grand ceremony in 1544. These men cannot get the better of me. I'm a queen in waiting, popular with the people. I cannot be harmed. Sickened by the boat's motion, I cry out, "Let us pull over so I may recover." The warehouses line the north bank, rising up like monsters from the deep. I've slept in many beds during my life's course, often with maids, occasionally alone, never with a man, though a number tried. The one here is appropriately boat-shaped and sumptuously draped with sea-green curtains, composed of flesh, blood, and mottled bruises. I will the lungs beneath my chest to keep breathing. In and out, in and out. Mere mortal that I am. Your procrastinating must end. The hour fast approaches. Jay. The name sticks like a craw in my throat. Did you hear that? The Archbishop asks breathlessly. She can't speak. In air now grown fetid, my finger draws a circle. She's making the shape of a crown. My lady of the bedchamber understands, as does Kat, my old governess, returned to help me in my final trial. Is it to be James, the King of Scotland? Cecil's voice, low and urgent, breaks through the gloom. She's nodding consent, the Archbishop says. She keeps fiddling with the locket. What's in it? Leave it. Kat covers my hand. No man dare argue. In such moments, women protect their own. The ring has 6 rubies, and the letters E and R. The letter E has diamonds set over it, and the R is enameled in blue. But the ring bears a secret. Within the hinged head lie 2 miniature portraits, one of myself and another of an unnamed woman wearing a French hood. I imagine their gasps on opening it. She bears the look of... Kat will likely puff out her chest and tell them there was never any doubt she was her father's daughter. You only had to look at her. But God bless her, she was her mother's daughter too. Lingering on the threshold, my soul must finally meet its maker. I hear Kat's voice loud and clear. Open the windows so the queen can smell the fresh cut grass. It's being pecked at by a rook. No more prevarication. My hour has come. Gardener's world. You've chosen a good time to pay me a visit. I've pulled up some pretty decent leeks this morning. Got some lovely onions in the store and a rosemary bush that is totally oblivious to all the nonsense that seems to have befallen our world. My garden really has been my savior, my little farm. I can grow what I need and get by very nicely on what my garden supplies. I do wish I'd had a better crop of carrots. I used the finest bone meal fertilizer, but they were a total bust this year. My soil is a little too heavy for them, too much clay. But it's the carrot fly that really did for them. They said our biggest enemy was the sickness. Then they tried to say it was the foreign governments. Then it was all about misinformation and the enemy within. But I survived because I knew all along My only real enemy is carrot fly. When the gas supply was cut off back in 25, I opened up an old fireplace so I could cook on an open flame indoors. Not a pretty job, no power tools, naturally. So, me and Axe had to do most of the heavy work, hacking out the wall they'd used to gag the old hearth. I like it though. The exercise, solving problems, working out a plan to get me to the next crop. Most of the stuff we've lost, I didn't care for anyway. You're lucky today with the weather. It gets too smoky and hot indoors, even with the chimney. No, on a day like this, we cook al fresco. Something lovely about doing my cooking in the place where I get most of my food. I'm a man of nature. That's what I am. You saw my roses on the way in, didn't you? It's the roses and the raspberry canes that bring people to my garden. I took part of the fence down so people can see them more easily, so they can come in and explore. Fancy that. In times like these, someone actually taking part of a good, strong fence down. Well, there's method to my madness. I like to have visitors. Brought you here to me today, didn't it? Relax. Enjoy the sun. Would you like some water? I've got plenty. Since the neighbors have been thinning out, I've been using their houses' guttering, as well as my own, to collect the rain. Been able to grow in their gardens too. That's why I'm doing so well in these tough times. That's why I can afford to lose a few raspberries to curious, hungry bypassers. Waste nothing and work hard. That's me. Do whatever needs to be done. Please, have some water. But how is he going to cook out here, you ask? A very good question. Let me just remove this old tarp. And ta-da! An old enamel bath. Not as common as they once were. But this beautiful old iron roll top was in my neighbor's place. He was a lawyer in the old days. Fat lot of good that did him. Must have cost a fortune. Weighs a ton. I convinced them to help me carry it here in exchange for some food and water. And here we are, those old claw and ball feet holding it up above my fire. An antique bath sitting on my lawn in the shade of my willow. Heaven, you look a bit concerned. Don't worry about the staining on the sides of the bath. That's inevitable when you cook with direct heat like this. It looks dirty, but it's not. It's just well seasoned from all the grease and juices. I'll just get this fire lit. Thank you for gathering all of this wood, by the way. Told you I'd trade you for water and the raspberries, didn't I? I'm a man of my word. We'll need a couple of buckets of water for the tub. And what else? I think today we'll have a couple of these leeks. No carrots, though. Curse you, carrot fly. And I think we'll have a big, dirty handful of the fresher stems from my gnarly old rosemary bush. Don't worry, The heat will kill the germs. I'll use some of this too. Take a look. It's a pot of fat. My grandma would have called it dripping. You must keep this stuff. It's more valuable than gold, literally, these days. I preserve it whenever I cook. It's full of calories and protein and goodness. It keeps for ages. I've got a cupboard full of it. This is from the last few rabbits I cooked. It's a bit of a cocktail, to be honest. Rabbits, rats, squirrels, street rats, raspberry thieves. Only joking, they weren't thieves. You're not a thief. I can spare a few raspberries. I'm going to get this beautiful stuff, nice and hot, and then get the leeks in there. Then the water and the rosemary. Axe, get over here, you big lump. He looks brutal, but I keep him sharp enough to chop the leeks. Look, he's bright as a sushi knife. I can use him to shave. Look close. There now. A slice of leek you can see through. That will just melt in the fat. My mouth is watering. Did you hear that? I love that sound, that sizzle. The popping twigs under the bath. The first chunk of leek sliding around in there, in all that greasy goodness, hissing and cackling. The sun weeping through the old willow. No more horrible planes overhead. No traffic. No more reports about all the doom and gloom. No more sirens. Just a sizzle and a pop, and the waft of home cooking on the late summer breeze. Potatoes. How could I forget potatoes? I sometimes think I'm losing my mind. Not many of this year's crop left, but this is the best way to use them. They add body. Oh, that was unintentional, sorry. Please don't be upset. Poor taste has no place in my garden. Well, I must say, it's been nice to have someone to talk to, other than Axe. It has been a while. The raspberries will be dying off soon, and the roses won't last for much longer after that. I suspect I'll be getting fewer visitors. But never mind. I'm going to have plenty of provisions to keep me strong over the winter. And there's still blackberries out, so you never know. I'll be fine in the house, sleeping in the cellar with Axe. Anyway, looks like we've got a rolling boil going here. So sorry, but it's bath time. Renaissance. The view from the first floor bedsit window tonight was dreary. Great drifts of spume hurtled across the road, leaving shallow lakes to creep across the promenade and pour back into the ocean. Richard turned away and sat morosely on the threadbare chair beside the bed, dully regarding the marked and faded wallpaper, the fly-specked single light bulb oscillating gently in the draft from the ill-fitting windows. He turned his attention to the faded and patterned floor covering. If he looked closely, images danced before his eyes. The head of a huge silverback gorilla, stared belligerently at him. Elsewhere, gibbons swung elegantly from a treetop. A demon glared at the periphery of his vision. But his favorite of all, which he could discern the most easily, a lissom and naked young woman, leaning invitingly against a doorframe, with raised knee shielding the promise of a hinted pudenda. He tore his eyes away and checked his watch. 5 o'clock. A long time yet. Then the usual Wednesday footsteps pittered along the hallway below, as he had known they would, and splashed down the entrance steps and onto the footpath. He craned his neck and saw the familiar, rain-coated figure, umbrella turned into the wind, pittering along the street, ridiculous high-heeled shoes dancing amongst the puddles. They were red. They always were. He watched the figure until it rounded the corner. Once gone, it was as if it had never existed. Ephemeral, like life itself. The heavy overcast drew the fading light into full darkness sooner than it might have, but much too soon yet. All that could be done was to watch the street lamps down the length of the promenade, floating in their own pools of shifting light, like so many illuminated masts in harbor. Their reflected light sending streamers of rain, runneling almost horizontal on the outside of the windows. Richard switched on his own, gently swinging light bulb. Instantly, in the window's reflective depths, the ghost of his sallow face stared blankly back with haunted eyes. He turned off the light, and his ephemeral self blinked out. Another ghost laid to rest, dark. He closed his eyes. Without light, the harsh demarcation of the four corners of the room became infinity. He floated in its comforting, amniotic embrace, attached to the present only by an umbilical whipcord of anxiety. In the end, the pull proved too much, and he was drawn back to harsh reality, like the sudden deliverance of a breech birth hacked into being by the surgeon's knife. He strode across to the window to ease his cramping muscles. The fight, already lost, as he had known it would be, reborn. His night eyes saw the darkness bleeding rivers, shedding blood-thick tears down the outside of the window pane, reflected from the passing car's tail lights and the wildly tossing promenade lights, to pool gelatinous on the windowsill. He imagined he felt a wetness on his hands, a warm and glutinous, congealing wetness. He followed the raindrops across the window with his finger and left on the inside an imaginary, sanguine tracery. He looked at his hands as if for the first time, wondering at their unfamiliarity, their symmetry, their grossness, recognizing their disguised strength beneath the tremor, recognizing also that the unsteadiness was an excitement taken beyond control that shivered its way down the length of his body, a thirst that demanded to be slaked. The night was full dark now. He opened the door and left softly. The outer door swung shut behind him, a sepulchral sound entombing the stillness of the musty hallway. He paused, head hooded against the needling rain, and peered through the sheeting curtains that obscured the view one moment, then swept on the next. The promenade swam with color, a surrealist nightmare of spiraling light and plunging shadow. By comparison, he felt himself a monochrome shade, an empty vessel, drifting powerless in a roaring ocean of color that had no other purpose than to toss him to and fro until his destiny had been fulfilled, and then return him spent to his harbor, bereft, befouled, bedizened, red, blood red, red. The pavement orgasmed with the color. Pools of liquid carmine shimmered at his feet, as fitful as a broken promise, pigmented only by the festooning lights. Once around the corner, away from the promenade's glitter, the pooling rain became dark and wet and cold again, and Richard's head cleared. The madness was at his back now, but his way still lay forward. Into the dark, the street in front was empty. Houses on each side, isolated cocoons of brick and light and love. The only sound that of Richard's footsteps measuring their length through the puddles, and the gurgle of rain cascading down the gutters. Richard slipped a hand inside his coat pocket and caressed the slivered blade that nestled there. The ice-keen touch upon his skin raised the hackles of his neck. Waves of anticipation raced down his spine and through his fingers, which spasmed. The stiletto point pricked, and he withdrew his hand to savor the sensation. Blood globbled on his fingertip like a black polyp, and Richard raised it to his eyes in fascination. Then it was dashed away by the rain, which carried it in thin streamers across his hand. He put it to his mouth and sucked, refreshed by the cool wetness of the rain, seasoned with the heavy tang of his own blood. He suckled a moment, then moved on. Like a fading echo, he kept to the shadows, flitting from doorway to doorway, avoiding the ubiquitous, questing cameras with the ease of long familiarity. Narrow alleys drifted by to his left, dark, anonymous canals choked with the jetsam of urban life. He passed these by. An island of brilliance signaled further on, neon lights searing holes in the dark, caking the road with an impasto of color, so thick, so scarlet, so palpable, and yet as insubstantial as breath. Richard's own breath came with slow, measured control, resting so low and soft in his throat that it could have been a purr. He took shelter in a deep shop doorway, transfixed by the neon flicker, and waited. Cars planed by, streaming rubied skeins beneath their wheels. The zoom of tires, louder than their engines. In the glow of the neon lights, car doors opened, clunked shut. Voices cried, footsteps splashed, running, pattering up the steps of the cinema, and halted while hands flapped, shook at sodden raincoats, then hurried on into the foyer to be swallowed up, lost to a world as transient as their own. Brief lives Richard watched and waited, measuring the passing time by the measure of his breath. It beat in time with his pumping heart. Red, 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 red blood red, red blood red. Outgoing picture-goers from the early program began to trickle out, raising umbrellas against the rain, in pairs, in groups, singly. Richard left the shelter of the doorway, heading for the car park. The cinema car park was small and little used, emptying quickly now as the patrons swept homewards to their fires and their families. Richard mingled briefly with the slowing trickle of incoming patrons as he made his way to the rear of the building, with the occasional patron leaving by the convenient rear exit. He edged into a gap between the bulk refuse containers and the boiler housing, and melded into the dark. His position commanded a sweep of the car park entrance on the one hand, and on the other, a view of the few remaining cars. One by one, they cleared as their passengers scampered by his hiding place, family groups squealing against the lashing rain, individuals going their separate ways. Richard's heart pounded with the effort of holding still, of awaiting the moment. And the moment came. A lone figure scampered down the short flight of steps, down from the rear fire exit. Last to leave, as it always was, coat drawn over its head, red shoes pittering their regular Wednesday footsteps, as they had pittered earlier in the evening. Silent as shadow, Richard stepped out, staying a startled gasp with a hand cupped across the figure's mouth, and drew it to the shelter of the bins. His fingers clamped hard across its face, whilst terrified eyes stared wildly into his own snake pit pupils. Arms and legs flailed, then stiffened in shock as Richard drew his knife and stilled the working mouth with a single thrust, skewering the blade into the palate through the base of the jaw. Lips grimaced in pain, eyes squeezed tight shut against the nightmare, chest heaving with a locked-in scream. Blood welled in the mouth, down the nose, trickled, flowed, torrented. The slick, sensuous feel caressed Richard's fingers as it channeled down the blade. At its touch, he jerked the blade free, the jaw gagging slack, and drove it between the breasts and up, working it inward, twisting, grating, rich, dark blood, bubbled, gouted from the gaping mouth, spouted with air expelled from the riven lungs. He withdrew the blade and stared at questing eyes that glazed over as he watched, supporting the body that slumped in his grasp, and as the head lolled, let the woman drop like a discarded rag. Richard stood over the huddled heap, spent, supporting himself on the wall, watching with lackluster eyes the dark pool spreading from the placental evisceration of the torn body. The rain lapped at the edges, washing it away in rivulets. He stepped out into the car park and walked quietly away, head bowed against the rain, in common with the other few pedestrians hurrying home for shelter. As though in expiation, the rain lashed down even harder, washing the body clean, rinsing the blood into the gutters. Richard pulled his hood down across his tormented eyes, then hunched his shoulders against the torrent. Behind him, the faint sound of laughter mocked from within the cinema. He let the laughter wash over him dully and raised his face to the sky, mingling its tears with his own. The glistening street arrowed back to the seafront, a dark, lonely fairway to a hopeless harbor, leaving death behind. Leaching into the rain, he drew a shuddering breath and took a first, hesitant step home, reborn once more to a hopeless, pointless life, until the next dead, red rain time. And on the vinyl floor, the demon leered, "Stay quiet, friend." Lila sank into the couch, the flickering glow of the TV screen illuminating the shadows that loomed the darkened room. She had chosen a silly rom-com, hoping to distract herself, but the air felt thick, almost suffocating. Every creak of the old house made her jump, and the shadows in the corners seemed to whisper her name in a language she couldn't understand. It was late, and her roommate Clara was working on her thesis upstairs. But Lila couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't the only ones in the home. An uneasy tension coiled in her stomach, forcing her to triple check behind each door, under the couch, and even peered behind the shoe rack, half expecting to find something or someone hiding within. She ducked below the kitchen counters, her fingers feeling for a butcher's knife. Her heart sank when she felt the empty spot in the knife rack. It was missing. The chill creeping up her spine told her that whatever was happening was more than just her imagination. She glanced toward the back door, where the moonlight shimmered through the glass panes, casting eerie reflections that danced on the walls. A sudden gust of wind rattled the bay window, sending a shiver through her. Something was off. With a tentative step, she approached the back door, feeling the cold metal handle beneath her palm. The moment she unlocked it, her phone buzzed on the coffee table. The sound startled her, and she snatched it up, her pulse quickening at the sight of Clara's name. "Did you hear that?" the message read. A cold dread settled over her, crawling beneath her skin as the unease that had settled over her intensified. What could Clara possibly be hearing? She typed back, "Hear what?" but hesitated, glancing down the hallway that led to the stairs. The dim light from the TV cast erratic shadows that flickered and danced. And for a fleeting moment, Lila thought she saw something move behind the curtains. Her breath hitched, a primal instinct warning her that she was not alone. Maybe it was just the movie messing with her mind, but the feeling of being watched pressed heavier on her chest. Another message chimed in. "I think someone's outside." Panic surged through Lila's veins, prickling her skin. She stood frozen for a moment, weighing her options. Should she check the back door or run upstairs to her roommate? Clara's words echoed in her mind. Why would she think someone was outside? How could she guess that? Why is she being so casual about it? "Are you sure?" Lila typed back, her fingers trembling. "Just stay quiet," Clara replied. "I'll call you when I'm sure." A shiver ran down Lila's spine. Her instincts screamed at her to call the police, but fear held her in place. The silence grew oppressive, and she could hear the faint sound of something dragging from above. Without thinking, she moved to the back door, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. As she reached for the handle, a scream erupted from upstairs, a raw, piercing wail that silenced the night. It was Clara's voice. Adrenaline propelled Lila forward as she bolted toward the staircase, her heart hammering in her chest. "Clara!" she yelled, bounding up the steps 2 at a time. The hallway stretched out before her, dark and foreboding, thick with an air of dread. "Clara!" she shouted again, panic clawing at her throat. The scream had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence that felt like a warning. When she reached Clara's door, her hand trembled as she tried to push it open. It was locked. Why was it locked? Lila fumbled for her spare key, forcing the door open. The room was empty, save for the dim glow of Clara's laptop on the desk. Papers were strewn about, books toppled over, and the window was wide open, allowing a chilling breeze to sweep through the room. Lila stepped inside, her heart racing. "Clara," Lila called softly, her voice just above a whisper. "Where are you?" Suddenly, she heard a soft rustling from the bathroom. Her breath caught, and fear settled like a stone in her stomach as she approached, each step feeling heavier than the last. She reached for the door, her mind racing with images of Clara being attacked. She hesitated, her hand hovering over the handle, glancing back at the open window that seemed to beckon her to escape. Then her phone buzzed again, illuminating the screen with another message from her roommate. "Don't come in." Lila's heart sank, and a sense of dread washed over her. The message was sent from Clara's phone, but something felt wrong. "Are you okay?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The rustling from the bathroom stopped abruptly, replaced by a suffocating silence that wrapped around her like a shroud. Lila took a step back, cold sweat prickling her skin. She felt trapped. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but she couldn't leave Clara. With trembling hands, she yanked open the bathroom door. Clara stood there, her eyes wide and wild, blood staining her nightgown, the crimson liquid soaking into her hair like a macabre halo. In the bathtub, a body lay motionless, limbs grotesquely scattered like a puzzle, arms and legs discarded beside the sink. The young woman's lifeless eyes stared vacantly at the ceiling, unseeing. Lila could barely make out the limb hanging from Clara's hand, for in the other was a knife, glistening in the remnants of her victim. Lila froze, her mouth dry and her mind reeling. The air thickened with a metallic tang, and she could feel her lungs begging for air. "Clara," her voice cracked, trembling as violently as her body was. "What have you done?" Clara slowly turned her head, a strange, twisted smile creeping across her lips, glistening with the blood that stained her face. "You said you didn't hear anything," she said, her voice cold and deliberate. "You lied." "I didn't," Lila began, only to be cut off. "You lied," Clara repeated, her tone sharp, cutting through the air like the blade in her hand. "You need to stay quiet, friend, and I'll make sure you never lie again." The door behind Lila slammed shut, sealing her inside the suffocating darkness. Fear surged through her as Clara advanced, the knife glinting ominously in the dim light. "Clara, please." Lila's plea faded into a whimper, the weight of impending dread crushing her. Without warning, Clara lunged forward, the blade slicing through the air with a cruel precision. Pain exploded in Lila's mouth, and she gasped, trying to scream, but the sound was swallowed by the metallic taste of blood. As Clara withdrew the knife, Lila felt a sudden emptiness. Her tongue, her voice, her very essence slipped from her mouth and fell to the floor with a sickening thud. Clara's eyes gleamed with a wild delight as she leaned closer, whispering words that curled around Lila's mind like smoke. "Now you'll stay quiet," Clara said, her voice low and dripping with satisfaction. "No more lies, no more noise." The door behind Lila slammed shut, the weight of darkness closing in, silencing her voice and sealing her fate. "Charles?" "He said he'd be here an hour ago. I decided to go to sleep because I have to get up early tomorrow. I told him that. I told him that I was going to Montreal to see my ex-boyfriend because we might be getting back together. We might be getting back together, even though my ex-boyfriend refuses to move back to the United States because he says we're a country built on the graves of the innocent. As if every country isn't like that. I told the guy I was talking to that I wanted to hook up before I left tomorrow. Because if I end up back with my boyfriend, then it'll be a little bit like going into prison, because my ex-boyfriend insists on monogamy, even though he knows I don't believe in it. I don't cheat. So if we get back together, I'll be loyal to him, and I'll get bored pretty quickly. A hookup before then will be my last good meal before incarceration. I told him I was submissive, even though I'm feeling dominant tonight. I told him I like normal stuff, even though I know the word normal can be problematic. I told him my name is Charles. It's not. He's not entitled to know things about me. Whoever he is, and however the night was going to go, I was never going to see him again. I don't believe in friends with benefits. I believe a one-night stand should only last for one night. I believe it makes the experience hotter if you know it's going to be singular. I gave him my address. He told me he was a few miles away. I could see that he was telling the truth. He shared his location on the app. Yes, there he was, a few miles away. I told him I was looking forward to seeing him. I was. He looked handsome in his photos, a little older than the age on his profile. But people lie about that. People lie on the apps. I lied. I said my name is Charles. It's not. I'm not entitled to the truth any more than he is. He says he's 35. I don't think he is. It's okay. I don't need him to be 35. I just need him to look like his photos. He sent 4. In 3, he looks very handsome. In the 4th, I'm not sure. It's all a risk. A gamble. You roll the dice. You give out your address. You give access to a stranger. You're a man. Why would you be scared? Men are still men. Gay men are still men. Men don't need to be afraid. When have I ever really been afraid? He didn't show up in a few minutes. I know right away I'm being stood up. He's flaking on me. It happens. I send a message. The app tells me he sees it. He reads it, but he doesn't respond. I send a hello? I send a I send a dude, seriously? I debate sending a rant, a tirade. I debate lecturing him on wasting my time. I decide it's not worth it. His spot on the shared map doesn't move. I decided to go to sleep. I let a little negativity in. I tell myself he wouldn't have flaked if I was cuter. He would have showed up if I weighed 10 pounds less. He would have come if my hairline wasn't receding. It's my fault. I'm disgusting. That's why my ex broke up with me. Not because he moved to Montreal to work for a marketing company there. It was me. It was because he wanted to get away from me. I go to sleep without packing my suitcase like I had promised myself I would. Now, I'll have to do it quickly tomorrow, and I'll be rushing to the airport, and I'll be cursing myself the entire time, but I'll be blaming the guy from last night who never showed up and sent me down a shoddy path. I'm woken up by my phone vibrating. I've always been a light sleeper. My ex used to wake me up with his snoring. I mentioned it to him once, and he was embarrassed. Maybe that was why he decided to break up with me. Why would I complain about something like that? Who do I think I am? I look at my phone. I've only been asleep for 20 minutes. I check to see why the phone is buzzing. I'm hoping my ex has texted to say, "Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow, XOXO," but I don't have any new text messages. I should have known from the tone of the vibration. That was the app. I have a new message. It does occur to me that it might be the flaky guy from earlier. Maybe something came up and he wants to apologize. I look at the message. Yes, it's from him, but it's not an apology. It says, "Your name isn't Charles." I tell myself, he's a weirdo. He is. He is a weirdo. Who sends something like that? I don't question how he knows my name isn't Charles. He might have found me on social media. He might have talked to someone else on the app that knows my name isn't Charles. He might have gone to hook up with some other guy, and they got to talking about me. How I'm a liar. How my photos make it look like I weigh less, and my hairline isn't receding. He might have always known my name wasn't Charles. We might have talked prior to this, and I didn't know it, because I delete the app every other day, because I hate having it on my phone. I hate being on there. I hate all apps, even the ones that say they're for dating, even though they're really all for sex. He might have been playing with me this entire time, mocking me without me realizing it. Flaking was part of the game. I block him. I need to go back to sleep. A minute later, the phone vibrates. It's that same specific buzz. I look at the phone. Yes, I have a new message. I check. Your name isn't Charles. How did he message me? Does he have another profile? No, it's the same profile. I block him again, but this time, his profile doesn't even disappear. It must be a glitch in the app. Great. It's bad enough these apps have destroyed interpersonal connections, but now they don't even work properly, if they ever did. I delete the app from my phone. I'll re-download it if my ex doesn't want to get back together. But he will. And this time, we'll make it worth it. So I'll never have to download it again. I'm only going to think positive things moving forward. I'm going to do what my therapist tells me. And I'm going to drink water. And I'm not going to set my time on fire by being on apps. The phone vibrates. The app is back. How is it back? Apps have glitches, but they can't download themselves onto your phone once you take them off. That can't happen. Yes, a message. Your name isn't Charles, something else. I notice his distance has moved. He isn't 4 miles away anymore. Now he's 3 miles away. He's a mile closer than he was. Why? I look at the shared location. He stopped sharing. I can't see the dot anymore. Can he do that? I don't remember anyone being able to do that. But I don't remember any of this being possible. I blocked him. I shut him out. How is he still here? How is he still messaging me? My phone vibrates. Tell me your name. This isn't right. I get out of bed. I nearly trip over the 2 piles of clothing I left unfolded on the floor. What should I do? I think about contacting the police. But what are they going to do? I'm just some guy who was looking for no-strings sex on an app after midnight. They won't take me seriously. And so what if the guy is coming here? I live in an apartment building. He can't get inside. The lobby door is locked. He doesn't know what floor I'm on. He doesn't know which door is mine. I delete the app again. I'm safe. There's no reason I shouldn't feel safe. But now, I can't sleep. I decide maybe now is a good time to start packing. I'll make the most out of this anxiety. I'll pack my suitcase. I'll get things in order. I might even leave early for the airport. Why not? I've never been early for anything in my life. But why not start now? The whole point of the trip is to become a new person, a better person. I never should have gone on the app in the first place. I'm practically taken. I'm practically in a relationship. I should have just gone to bed. Another vibration. I look at the phone. Your name isn't Charles. Then, very quickly, tell me your name. I check the distance. I can't help myself. He's a mile away. How did he move so quickly? Have I lost my sense of time? What time is it? Why is he bothering to drive all this way? I explained to him when we first spoke that I live in an apartment. I told him that I would have to buzz him in. He must know I'm not going to do that now. He must know that even if someone else lets him into the building, he'll never figure out which floor I'm on and which apartment I'm in. And even if he did, I'm not going to open my door for him. He can't get to me. Why won't he just give up? And why is he badgering me about my name? Why does it matter? I wanted him to come over. I asked him to. He was the one who stood me up. He was the one who didn't show. Why is he angry with me? Because I lied? Because I lied about my name? Why does he care about my name? A vibration. Does Charles live in apt number 407? Or is that you? That can't be right. I never gave him my apartment number. I'd never be that stupid. I have a system for this. When I invite someone over, I check the lobby camera to make sure they look like their photo. Then, I buzz them in. It's only when they've signed in with the security guard in the lobby that I let them upstairs. That's when I tell them which apartment is mine. I'm smart. I'm smart about this kind of thing. How does he know my apartment number? Does he know me? Is this a catfish? Has he been over here before? Is someone playing a joke on me? I call downstairs. The security guard answers the phone. I don't know his name. I think it might be Trevor, but I'm not sure. I don't interact much with the nighttime security guards. Hello? Excuse me? This is number 407. I was wondering if you could do me a favor. If someone shows up. Sorry, the security guard says. What's your name? I nearly dropped the phone. Why? You said you're in number 407, but I need to know your name. I've lived here for 8 years. I'm sure you have, but I need to know your name. Can't you just look it up? I can't. I'm sorry. What's your name? Something occurs to me. Is it you? I'm sorry. Are you the one doing this? Is it you? I don't give him a chance to answer. I hang up. The phone vibrates. I check the message. Buzz me in. I want to boil the phone in water. I want to put it in the microwave. I want to dump it in the air fryer. But I need it for tomorrow. I need to let my ex know when my plane takes off and when it lands. I need to let him know that I'm getting an Uber when I get there because he's going to be busy at work, so he can't pick me up. And that's fine. That's not a big deal. This is a big deal. Why is this? A new message. Never mind. I'm in. No. How can he be? I check the lobby cam. There's nothing there. It's black. The screen is black. Why do I pay for security if I can't see the lobby cam? Why do I pay for a security guard who just wants to ask my name over and over again? Why do I pay to keep people out if they can get in? I look at the distance. He's less than 100 feet away. I'm in the elevator. I think about responding to him. I think about telling him that he can't come in. I won't let him. I think about begging him to go home. I think about telling him that I'm going to call the police. I think about saying I'll kill him. I think about saying that I'll beat him to death with a baseball bat. I don't own a baseball bat, but he doesn't know that. Does he know that? What does he know? Just got off on the 4th floor. No, I consider pushing my couch in front of the door. But why? Can he break down a door? Is he that strong? He doesn't look strong in his photos. He looks lean and in shape, but not capable of breaking down a door. But is that him? Were those photos really him? Could this be an entirely different person? Should I scream? Will my neighbors hear me? Will they care? It's so late, and a knock. My mouth is dry. All the salivas turned to sweat and pooled in my armpits and down my backside and over my palms, while my feet are stone cold and my breath refuses to calibrate. I move towards the door. I don't sense anybody on the other side. Would I sense it? Could I trust myself to sense it? Earlier, I thought I had everything under control. I had lined up a nice fling before flying off to Montreal. I knew what the night was. I knew what the morning would look like. What do I know now? I lean my ear against the door. Will I hear breathing? Will I hear the shuffling of feet? The cracking of knuckles? I hear nothing. I wish I had a peephole. Why don't I have one? I don't have one because by the time someone reaches your door, you're supposed to know who they are. You're supposed to know that they belong there. I hear nothing. I think about opening the door, the way someone who finds themselves trapped on a ledge might wish to simply fall and have it be done with. I think about opening the door and welcoming in whatever might be on the other side. I think about letting the vampire taste me. After all, he's already here. Instead, I do it. I close my eyes and I whisper something. My name, my real name. The phone vibrates, and then I hear the sound of someone walking away. Take me. I no longer wanted to live my life, but neither did I wish to die. So I resisted the temptation of the eternal abyss, knowing that any afterlife would hold no consolation. In effect, choosing a living death, achieved by numbing my senses against the world and disappearing within. By day, it was books, movies, video games, anything to place my mind in the body of another, transporting my consciousness to a plane where there were strict rules, and the main character always triumphed, as opposed the uncertainty of my own existence. Rarely did I surface from fantasy, and only when my body demanded it, absolutely necessary. The sun never graced my flesh, and the air of my sealed chamber weighed heavy with my own musk. I was a fully grown woman, living as a teenage boy, and I didn't care. By night, it was a chemical affair. Amber spirit of any form or flavor would achieve my goal, as long as it was served with ice in its heart. Taste was a luxury I could ill afford, not after losing my career to sheer apathy. It no longer seemed of any import whether digital numbers fell in line with invented targets. The whole world operated on an imaginary system of credit that existed only because we said it did. Anything outside of a practical vocation for which I no longer had time or patience to learn felt like playing pretend and a waste of life. My usual haunt was a quiet dive bar at the end of my city block. Its proximity, the only deciding factor, limiting the expedition home to a straight-line stumble. That night, I spent as any other, nursing a tumbler and examining the slow melt of the frozen shards it protected. "Time for one last round, sweetheart?" Frank asked, ducking his head into my line of sight. He was a kind soul. Despite the tattoo-covered biceps, large enough to toss me out like a rag doll, he always let me brood in peace. Watching my back and moving on any would-be suitors, the apparent ruffian doted on me with a brotherly worry. He never denied my cash, though. While busy at weekends, the quiet, dead-end joint couldn't afford to turn away drunks the rest of its working days. I felt at times to be single-handedly paying the poor guy's wage. "Always," I answered, offering up my low-tide glass and a half-hearted smile. As he poured, I glanced across the room. There were a few men in suits, clearly avoiding their homes and wives. A couple of tourists just looking for a warm place to rest, and a scattering of solitary older women. They, like me, I assumed, had nowhere else to go, no one to return to, and nothing to live for, aside from the never-ending goal of forgetting. I'd had it all. Not so long ago, I had been lucky enough to know love and comfort. However, my good fortune was stolen away by one solitary word, printed in black ink on a medical chart. That word had ripped my future away and burned it to ash for good measure, leaving me here in my perpetual endeavor to avoid my own existence. Holed up at the corner booth, he was there. As always, my constant, silent drinking buddy. Every night, he arrived like clockwork in a pressed black shirt and pants with shining black boots. His midnight wardrobe offset only by the pale ivory of his skin and the crimson of his lips. Ordering a single jar of bourbon, which would never grace his tongue, there he stoically remained, silently surveying the room. I had never even seen him rise to use the bathroom. How he managed to leave several times a week with a different conquest on his arm, I had no idea. Girl or guy, it didn't seem to matter to him. They just flocked to his side, like magnets being drawn together. With only a look, he seemed to seduce a target with an hour or less of minimal effort. He then escorted them out the door for what I only assumed to be a night of intense pleasure. He was certainly handsome in a clean-cut way, but he had never directed his gaze at me or any of the other regulars. It was always the passing through that succumbed. Alaric was his name, according to Frank. In spite of his blatant philandering, I couldn't help but imagine he treated his prey with more humanity, that I had been dealt by the man I once loved. That cursed filth had proclaimed to love me. The putrid liar had promised me protection. The venomous snake had abandoned me at my most vulnerable. One word was all it took to break our bond, shatter his oath completely. One printed word, voiced in clinical monotone under fluorescent lights. The word that tore my future to shreds and sent my beloved in search of a more suitable mate, infertile. I had been told I was still grieving, and knew it to be true. My depression, spiced with anger, told a traditional tale. What I considered a lie was that it would end in an accepted peace. How could it, when my natural immortality had been ripped away? Any harmony I would have found in life would have risen from knowing my memory, and soul would have persisted through the generations that came after me. Anecdotes told of my character to grandchildren and onward, keeping me alive in thought, my name on a branch of an ever-expanding tree. Instead, there would be no furthering of my story. It would end when I did. So why not just get it over with? Any experiences gained would be lost to time anyway. So why bother? Why expend all that energy on impermanence? I should have just ended the torment that day, when my forehead had been stamped with pointless. There were only two reasons I held back from instigating the end. One was the fear that any afterlife would be purposed with watching over loved ones, for which I had none. So it would tally that I would be no better off than I was now. The other was Alaric, and the solution I had begun to suspect he could offer me. My quest to lose myself in various media had educated me thoroughly in the ways of the vampire, the desperate young girl in need of connection, an outcast from the society surrounding her. Ill-fitting in the living world, she would always come across a creature of the night who would welcome her into his ranks, usually with sultry and salacious single-mindedness. Alas, if Alaric was what I suspected him to be, he ignored me, perhaps because my clouded mind was reaching for a fantasy solution to a real-life problem. Most likely, he was only a strange-looking man with a talent for seduction. Regardless, I couldn't shake the idea. Too many aspects of his regular attendance pointed to the supernatural. If I was wrong, all I would achieve was appearing like the drunk I had become, which was small consequence to risk being proven right. "Good evening, Alaric," I slurred, and slid onto the red velvet bench beside him. "Do I know you?" he asked in a soft English accent. His slow and steady speech belayed a calm in direct contrast to my harsh American. Not officially, but I've sat at that bar every night for several weeks, watching you. So I believe I know you very well. Oh? He asked, waiting for me to fill the space. I know what you are, I whispered, in the way that inebriated people do when they believe themselves subtle. And what is that? He said, smiling, as if humoring a toddler. The feeling of being infantilized by a look sent waves of submission through me. It made me feel safe under his powerful gaze, willing to surrender control into his adept hands. Returning to a childlike state would allow me to release the expectations I had placed on myself to assume parenthood, which only solidified my resolve to follow my intended course of action. Vampire, I blurted. I did not want to drag this out into a feature film of suspect and intrigue. I wanted my answer and solution that night. The sooner, the better. His reaction was as expected. A hearty laugh, but one that did not convince his eyes that my accusation was truly funny. Does such a thing exist? He asked of me. I did not believe so until I happened upon you. I see you taking victims, always transients, who never return. You never drink, never eat, never use the bathroom. You are pale, intense, clothed in black, and I have only ever seen you at night. Perhaps I am simply peculiar, he offered. Perhaps. I nodded. I think it worth looking the fool to discover the truth. He responded, never breaking his eye contact. His intense stare examining every facet of me via the portal of my irises. It felt as though he flayed me from the outside until his scrutiny fell upon my vulnerable soul. I now understood how he seduced so many, so quickly. I wish you to turn me, I said, interrupting his gaze before I fell completely at his feet. My life has lost all meaning with the living, and I would greet death but for the fear of further loneliness. I see a single solution for one who would not live, but does not wish to die. So please, take me with you into immortality. Follow me, he said, and rose, striding to the doors, without looking back to see if I followed. He must have been as certain as I was that I would. Ignoring a disapproving look from Frank, I made my way across the room to the exit. I pursued my immediate master out of the bar and through dark alleys that all smelled of refuse and rats. Stumbling to remain on his heels, I signaled my deference like a dog called to attend. He stopped suddenly, turning and reaching a strong arm around my waist, and in one motion, pressing me against the scorched wall of a building. Dumpsters, boxes, and crates now blocked my view of anything but him. You would submit to your impulse? He asked, his lips pressed to my ear and his hand against my chest, pinning me in place against the cold bricks. I could feel his heavy breaths quickening in lust, his hand quivering where it rested between my breasts. Whether it was from desire for my blood or body, I still did not know. The chance of stretching my living death into infinity was worth giving him either. "You would succumb to my will?" he asked again. "Break from this life and join me in whatever comes next?" "Yes!" I screamed in ecstasy, feeling excitement and promise for the first time since that word had plunged me into darkness. "Take me, please. Take me away from this temporary world." Sudden pain and cold followed, his dead cheeks pressing against my neck and his teeth puncturing my jugular. My warm blood mixed with his icy touch, like boiling soup spilt on a snowy mountain. I closed my eyes and writhed in anticipation of the immortality I sought. Eventually, he pulled back. The world swam and swirled as my head felt as but a feather. I saw his chin stained brown with my dried blood. How long had I given myself to this creature? The low light of the alley weighed down on my senses. The rotten smell of the trash bags assaulted, and without his hard body pressed against mine, I felt exposed. Will it happen now?" I managed to mutter through the disorientation, my eyes rolling and unable to focus on his beautiful face. "Will you die?" "Yes." "Will you turn?" "I doubt it," he said, sneering down at me. Somehow he had grown tall, or I had fallen. I did not know which was more real. "I am a predator, not some romanticized, dangerous lover to be tamed, as this age loves to depict. You are nothing but prey. I have no desire to intentionally turn game, as I am sure you would not share your bed with a cow." He spun on his heels and stalked into the night. With no further words or explanation, I was alone, crumpled amongst the filth, dying in the dark. I had not the energy to fear, only regret the trust I had placed in a monster I had not understood. As my eyelids grew heavier and the cold seeped deeper, I began to long for those temporary years, the moments I was so willing to throw away, for all the time I could have had for myself, the experiences I could have taken as my own without concern of their lasting, for the lives I could have affected, but now never would. Perhaps the next plane would offer more than I had imagined. I did not intend to waste the chance again. If it did, I closed my eyes and waited for whatever would come next, accepting in peace that I had ushered in my own end by ungratefully reaching for more than I had been gifted. I am the silence between heartbeats. I'm talking to you. Yes, you. Don't pretend you didn't notice. That creak that whispers you tried to dismiss as nothing. It wasn't. I've been watching, listening. You've felt it, haven't you? That cold shiver crawling down your spine when you thought you were alone, when you told yourself the darkness was empty. But it's not, and neither am I. You're not scared? Oh, you will be. Do you know what bones sound like when they break? It's not the quick snap you're thinking of. No, it's much worse than that. It starts with a groan, like a branch struggling under heavy snow. Then comes the splinter, slowly, jagged. Bones are splitting apart, and fibers are tearing like meat from the bone. Have you ever heard someone scream while their bones are being shattered inside them? No? That's the sound I made before I became this. It wasn't quick. No, the first bone that cracked, it was my hand. I remember feeling the skin tear and muscles snapping like twine stretched to the breaking point. Then, the grinding started. Oh, you don't know the horror of that sound. Teeth on glass, nerves ripped apart, a shriek of agony trapped in your skull. My ribs didn't just break. They crushed and caved in, one by one, under the weight of the water. Each crack echoed in my ears as the cold flooded my lungs. The air became water, and sweet oxygen traded for salty, thick brine, choking me. Can you imagine it? You will. Picture your fingers bending, folding backward with a sickening crack. One by one, each digit twists until bone bursts through the skin like shards of glass. The agony isn't clean. It crawls up your nerves, searing, pulsing, until your vision blurs, and all you see is blood. Red. So much red. And then, when the pain becomes too much to bear, it doesn't stop. It never stops. I can feel your heartbeat now picking up. Faster. You're sitting there, reading this, telling yourself it's just a story, but I'm closer than you think. Close enough to taste the fear dripping off you like sweat. I could drag my nails across your throat right now and feel your skin split under the pressure. Do you think you're safe? Look at your hands. Go on. Look. Did you feel that? The prickling under your skin? That's me. I'm crawling inside you, testing you, tasting you. I want to see how much terror your body can handle before it snaps. And when it does, I'll be there to savor it. I'm with you now. Oh, I know you feel it. That crawling sensation under your skin, the burning pressure building in your chest. You're trying to ignore it and breathe steady. But your breath is shallow, right? Because I'm inside your fear. I live in the spaces between heartbeats, in the blood rushing through your veins. Soon, I'll live with you. When the lights flicker, the air grows thick with rot, and the cold wraps around your bones. You'll know I'm there. I'll make sure you do. Don't look around. Stay still. Listen. The creak. Like something crawling in the walls. It wasn't the house settling. I've been waiting for you to notice me. Waiting for you to let me in. You can't see me. Not yet. But you can feel me. That smell. Like something festering, rotting in the walls. It's stronger now, isn't it? That's because I'm closer than ever. And tonight, I want you to feel me fully. I want you to know what absolute terror is. What does fear taste like to you? Metallic, like blood in your mouth, thick and coppery, seeping from your gums. I know that sour, acrid taste is on your tongue right now. You keep swallowing, trying to push it down, but it clings to the back of your throat, doesn't it? You know something is wrong. Something is terrible. Breathe deeply. Go on. Do you feel your lungs expanding? Desperate for air? Picture them filling with water. Thick, cold, briny water crawls into your throat, clogging your airways and spilling down your chest until your lungs are swollen, heavy, and useless. You want to scream, but only bubbles rise, and they taste like salt and blood. You try to claw at your throat to free yourself from drowning, but your fingers break under the strain. Snap, crack. Your knuckles fold inward like brittle sticks. That was my death. And now, I want you to feel it. You're shaking now, aren't you? Your palms are slick with sweat, rubbing together to find warmth and friction. But there's none. There's only the cold. The deep, bone-deep cold, sinking in and gnawing at your flesh. That's me, wrapping around you, sliding under your skin. My hands, once warm, are now dead, frozen to the bone. If I touch you, I'll leave marks, black, festering bruises, and I already have. Do you feel it? The throbbing on your arm, like fingers pressing more profoundly and deeper until the skin splits? Don't look. It's already too late. Look in the mirror. Go on. See how your eyes have lost their light? How do they seem hollow, dark, and sunken? That's because I'm draining you, bit by bit. With every breath you take, and every second you spend reading this, I'm pulling you closer to me. Soon, when you look at your reflection, you won't be staring back. It will be me. Close your eyes. Hear that sound? The cracking, crawling, like insects gnawing through wood? That's what I feel inside you. Burrowing, eating through your nerves, tearing you apart from the inside, leaving nothing but rot and ruin. Do you think so? That burning in your chest, that pressure that's building, it's suffocating you, isn't it? That's what I want. Now imagine this. It's the middle of the night. You wake, but you can't move. Your limbs are frozen. You try to scream, but your voice is gone. You hear breathing, not yours. You can taste it on your lips, thick and sour. And then something touches your foot. Soft. A finger? It slides up your leg, leaving a trail of icy numbness that climbs higher. You can't move or scream. All you can do is feel it creeping up your skin, curling around your throat. That's how it started for me. I was awake. I felt it crawl into my lungs, deeper and deeper, until my breath was stolen. I thrashed, my nails splintering as I clawed at the walls, ripping the flesh from my fingers, blood pooling under my nails. But the dark was merciless. It wrapped around me, pulling me under and swallowing me whole. Do you feel it now? That tightness in your throat? Swallow. Does it feel harder? Like something's gripping your windpipe, slowly squeezing until all you can do is choke on the darkness. That's me. I'm inside you now. I'm watching you, watching your eyes flicker to the shadows, hoping nothing's there. But I am. I'm right behind you, inches away, staring at the back of your neck, so close I could reach out and dig my nails into your flesh. Feel the skin give way under the pressure. Feel the blood pulse beneath my grip. I could show you more. The way my fingers shattered as I clawed, desperate to escape. How my eyes bulged, veins throbbing, as the last breath was torn from my lungs. My flesh rotted and peeled away, leaving nothing but the cold, blackened bones beneath. You're not scared yet? You will be. Close your eyes. I'm going to show you what it feels like to die slowly, just like I did. A thin tether of domesticity. My new wife adopted a rescue dog that came into my surgery for a simple vaccination. Typically, I try to keep a professional distance, but she fell in love with the shaggy mutt, and I was trying to be a good father to her son, little Nate. She called the dog Catch. What fun it was to make Catch fetch. Fetch, catch, fetch, catch. It was a big tease, faking throw ball, making that big dog lope about looking for the ball. And one day, my stepson joined in the fun. Fetch, catch, he cried, swinging his arm in that clunky toddler way. Catch followed the arc of the make-believe ball through the air, but suddenly, something snapped in that canine mind, and the thin tether of domesticity severed when the dog realized it had been fooled by a small boy. Every dog is a wolf. Nate, a naked ape, didn't have a chance. I am a vet, and normally I am unaffected by blood and suffering. But this was different. My new wife lost her mind. And in that moment, I operated on a primal level of panic. I wrapped the gore in a plastic shopping bag and rushed Nate to the hospital, where the ER doctors stitched up his torn face like a patchwork quilt. but they were unable to reattach Nate's mangled arm. If only I'd been a few minutes earlier. If only I'd packed the arm in ice. I am a veterinarian, for God's sake. I am also a goddamned fool. I got back to the house that night, and first thing, I dragged the dog out behind the shed. The dog was innocent, I suppose. It was my new wife that brought the brute into our lives. Pitiful yellow eyes, whimpering remorse, the dog crouched low, and I blew its sorry brains out with my hunting rifle. Grief swells until it shrouds the entire universe in gray. Then it shrivels down to its hard black core and buries itself in your heart, where every other beat is a pulse of anguish. With grief comes anger, blame, and remorse. My new wife was a mess. The wounds healed, but Nate's face was puckered by scar tissue into a permanent rictus of surprise, and the shocking angularity of his right shoulder was a constant reminder of horror and loss. I spent a fortune on plastic surgery, which moderated the facial disfigurement so that Nate could move around in public without attracting too much attention. And when Nate was old enough, his prosthetic limb, the training wheel arm, was upgraded to a sleek, robotic carbon fiber contraption that he controlled by twitching the muscles in the shoulder. He was a passable imitation of a teenager, but joy and hope seemed absent. Sports and clubs and friendship too. He spent hours alone in his bedroom. The one-armed boy, her damaged son. Nate's mother was immobilized by grief, which soon turned to irreversible and ever-deepening depression. She grew thin and weak, listless and atrophied. Her face became an ashen mask. She became a passenger, a burden, useless to me, and she avoided the boy. She couldn't bear the sight of his missing limb. She couldn't bear the daily reminder of her terrible error. Finally, with her maternal and spousal duties fully abandoned, she one day went to collect the mail from the mailbox at the end of the driveway and never returned. Months later, her skeletal remains were found by a road cleaning crew on a quiet stretch of I-95. In her pocket, they found a picture of little Nate, pre-accident, still precious and whole, with his right arm draped over the neck of the dog. Madeline Marks, a comely senior at the high school, invited Nate to the school prom. It was an improbable match, but I was desperate to see Nate achieve a modicum of happiness, independence at least. So I said a little prayer and hoped for the best. Perhaps she was one of those do-good angels who tried to make everyone feel included, or who are blind to disablement. But something felt wrong. The children at Nate's school were relentless bullies, tortured Nate with minor humiliations. My suspicions were substantiated later that night when Nate returned home early, alone, in tears. He was carrying his prosthetic arm like a piece of salvaged wood. It was covered in filth and looked badly damaged. His jacket sleeve was torn. Someone had ripped the prosthetic limb from its exoskeletal shoulder mount. I intercepted Nate, got a slice of the tawdry story out of him before he stormed up to his bedroom and slammed the door. Evil sometimes wears a pretty face. Nasty Maddie, bad girl Maddie, I ask you, as a man, what would you have done? From grief to anger, from anger to vengeance and retribution. We are talking of a short journey. The next day, Maddie's mother phoned and screamed groundless accusations at me. Where was Maddie? What did Nate do to her precious daughter? Nate was a schemer, a druggie, a weirdo, a monster. I was worse. I created the monster. It was true. This was as much my fault as anybody's. As a father, I was a failure. Not that I ever wanted the role. The police arrived with a warrant. They confiscated Nate's computer, and they asked him a lot of questions, which caused the scars on his face and neck to flare up bright crimson with suppressed shame and rage. The police were persistent. This strange-looking boy with the disfigured face and the articulated claw hand was their prime suspect. But Nate knew nothing. Maddie left him and went off with an older boy. She was probably on the lam in Augusta or Portland. It was a lewd prank to impress a clique of friends. It was a high school hazing, a warped Stephen King dare. Onlookers, teen boys and girls, laughed at Nate as he tried to pull the prosthetic from out of the toilet bowl, where Maddie's boyfriend had jammed it into the trapway. Nobody helped. The police detective, a pit bull man, took notes. A prank would not account for Maddie's absence. Something more sinister had happened to her, he was certain. They'd check Portland, they'd check Augusta. But I could tell, right from the get-go, they were focusing their biased and ignorant investigation exclusively on Nate. The detective even started on me. What was I doing on prom night? Had I seen the girl, Maddie? Had I aided and abetted in a crime? Newspaper reporters were sniffing around, rifling through the trash. A TV station sent a van over and parked outside, looking for an interview with Nate or me. Someone threw a brick through the front window. Someone fired a gun at the garage. Maddie's mother hissed at me like a cat outside the supermarket. Strangers spat at me in the street. My clients canceled appointments, and my staff at the surgery resigned. Maddie's body parts were mostly found strewn about the woods near our house, along the riverbank, and wedged between rocks on the trail behind the nearby transfer station. Maddie's head was impaled on a railing fence near the town pond. With her remains discovered so close to our house, it only intensified the scrutiny. I kept Nate inside, fearing a lynching. Not that he had any interest in going out. Where would he go? What would he do? An itinerant was discovered living in a squalid camp in the woods on the south side of Bald Mountain. A creep, a hermit. His hovel was part hidden by a cave and a clump of gnarled hemlock, and the nearby forest floor was surrounded by scraps of animal fur and bones, grisly, rotting offal. He was a wild man in his 50s who'd been stealing from cabins and campsites, trapping animals in the woods. He'd been living in the woods for perhaps 2 years. A charred piece of Maddie was found in his campfire. Case closed, but not completely. I waited a little while until things had died down a bit, until Nate seemed capable of grasping my concept properly. He seemed slow to understand, then outright confrontational. Nate was repulsed by the idea. What kind of madness was this? His own stepfather? Did I not understand how truly fucking evil this idea was? What had possessed me? What kind of man would do that? It was wrong. It was sick. He wanted nothing to do with it. He would denounce me. I confiscated his phone. He tried to leave the house, and I was forced to fight him to the living room floor, where I subdued him with sprayed triple drip that I used at the surgery to anesthetize livestock. When he came to, he was unyielding. There was no arguing with him. He would not see reason. I explained to him that it was too late anyway. In for a penny, in for a pound. There was no going back now. But eventually, I gave up arguing. Better to seek forgiveness than permission. I dosed him up for surgery. Once Maddie's arm was properly unfrozen, it turned out to be a pretty good match in terms of skin tone and musculature, though perhaps a bit smaller than I would have liked. Her blood type was compatible with Nate's, and the nerve endings and blood vessels were clean and undamaged. It would be a microsurgery marathon, but I was confident that I could perform the operation without any help. Perhaps I was never meant to be a parent. Nate seems to have adjusted reasonably well, though I don't see much of him these days, because it's best to keep him locked in his bedroom. Such rage in one so young. It can't be the arm, because to the casual observer, it looks quite passable, though a bit pale. And I know the operation was a brilliant success, because he recently hurled a can of Coke at me from the far side of his room and nearly knocked me unconscious. So vicious and accurate was the throw. Perhaps the melancholy is hereditary, but perhaps it's that twisted, scarred, and scowling face Who knows how that might affect a young person? He only has one expression, and I sense that it makes him unfit for an independent life. Nate has one friend, another loner type, a gaming buddy called Jeremy, who'd came around once to help Nate fix his computer. He and Nate had some kind of falling out. It occurs to me that Jeremy has a very passable smile,